Internet get very slow.
Yeah, does that sometimes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Academy of Astrology UK. I'm Rod Chang, and today with me is Marcus. I think Sue and Monday have something they couldn't make it, so only you and me, Marcus.
Hey.
So, as we say last week, today we're going to talk about Saturn return. I think if we have time, we'll go a little bit. What happened now is something quite, few things quite interesting.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The first is like the reason. The reason we say we should go. We want to go to the Saturn return was like nearly two weeks ago, but just like a little bit more than 1 week, I think. Adele, the very famous, and I love her song. Has an interview with Oprah, and then suddenly she's talking about why she had like a Saturn shaped earring and a Saturn tattoo on her wrist. And then she's talking about because for the last couple of years, it's kind of a tough year for her. And one of her friends told her, oh, because you are in Saturn return. And quite interestingly, this thing spread out and even come to the news. I think, I don't know which one, either Independent or The Guardian. I only read those two. Just make a report say, yeah, what is Saturn return? And I like that article because I think that journalist does homework.
Okay.
To really go through like at least it's not just like nonsense or this and that, but very well, kind of a very give a little bit about what astrologers think about Saturn return, and not really like try to scare people off, like say a lot of terrible things. As we know, I mean, in my teaching experience, most of I think students or people who know a little bit about astrology are usually afraid about Saturn return. And then I always remember one of my student, very early student. She is a very kind of a very good pianist and well known and really working really hard. But she's a Libra. Then she say,
yes, I remember you've told, yes.
Yeah, say, could we remove Saturn from the chart? And I tell her, say, dear, darling, your piano and the things you doing so well. You win the championship for the piano concerto competition. Are all thanks for Saturn, the hard working. I know, and then I know, yes, because even for myself, sometimes, I mean, for us, when we have Saturn transit or when we have anything related to Saturn, we will kind of, it wouldn't be fun. And then you have to, kind of working with it. So that's why I decided to say, people talking about Saturn return, why not let us talking about Saturn return and discuss about it? Because we can clarify something and then we can give some meaning of it. How about you start about the Saturn return?
Okay. Well, I mean, just in terms of when it happens in your life, it's usually between the ages of sort of 27 to 30, somewhere. And it depends because, depends on variables like, sometimes, anyway, bottom line, somewhere between 27 and 30. And really all it is it's when Saturn returns to the same place it was in the sky when you were born. The same, or should I say really, because it won't be exact, the same degree of celestial longitude when you were born.
So wow.
roughly
word now.
Well, just because there may be a few pedants, I myself being a pedant notice this. so there may be pedants watching or listening. So bottom line is because Saturn traditionally is the great malefic, a planet that symbolizes less, as you've alluded to, the less fun things in life. It's often thought of as the point in life when your maturity hits you the most strongly in a way. So sort of like because up until that point, I mean, it's very variable for everyone, and that's the main point I want to make. But that just Saturn return basics, it's around that period of your life. Saturn returns to where it was in your birth chart and emphasizes those Saturnian sort of qualities. And Saturn, amongst other things, it's really its prime signification is mortality. It's boundaries, because and what greater boundary is there than that between life and death? But Saturn symbolizes materiality, limitations, boundaries, restrictions, time. In other words, all the things that are necessary for creating this 3D universe, 4D universe that we inhabit. But a precondition for anything material, anything that exists has to end. Anything that exists by definition finite, at least in the physical realm, and Saturn rules the physical realm. So it rules mortality. So whenever a planet comes back to its point in your chart, it sort of emphasizes whatever it was doing in your birth chart, and it emphasizes its own qualities. And Saturn's qualities are heavy. So, but it really depends on your relationship to that planet in your own chart. Like the state of Saturn in your chart will tell you a lot about it. And it's not as simple as, is it in a good house? Is it in a good sign? Is it retrograde? Is it aspecting a good planet? It's all of those things. And crucially, as with all astrology, how you actually relate to that thing. Because you could have, and I have examples in my personal life, you could have people and clients and people who I know, you can have a terrible Saturn, which will produce good outcomes. Now, it also produces terrible outcomes. Okay. Saturn. You can't get it, there's no free lunches here. Saturn is Saturn. It's always difficult. But so in a Saturn return, some people will experience it as a really difficult time. Some people will experience it actually as quite a positive time. But it's always the time when, and if you think about it pragmatically, it's always like late 20s. It's, oh my God, I'm properly an adult. I'm nearly 30. What am I doing with my life? That's the vibe.
I think the Saturn return is kind of a journey to the adulthood, to take a responsibility and I think to make yourself like more mature. I agree. I 100% agree. The Saturn return was a long time ago for me, but I still remember. I still remember that time, and I think there is another thing. So when Saturn return usually happen around like a 27 to around 27 to 30, and that is the crucial time. But the next one, I think the 56th one, I think. That is another one. But usually I heard about people talking about their second Saturn return. Well, most people say fine, but they prepare for step into another stage. I don't want to say that's good, but that really fits into.
I interject out before I lose it. The one thing I always say about Saturn is Saturn moves slowly. You can always see Saturn coming. It's always about preparation. And if you've done the stuff that you're supposed to have done by now, it's okay. Anything that you were supposed to have done that you haven't done and you've been putting off, or you haven't kind of got your head because I don't want to do it. And that's when it gets really gnarly. But like it makes sense that the second one is easier than the first, because hopefully with maturity you're like, I've got to pay that bill. That if I don't like spend some money and repair my car, it's wheels going to fall off. If I don't patch up this situation, there's going to be problems down. It's kind of like one of those things with experience that you kind of.
I agree. Yeah, that's why I think the above part, when you pass the first Saturn return, I think when you probably have some idea about the second Saturn return, even the third Saturn return. I was like, wow, third, I really met someone. I remember a couple of years ago, I gave a talk, online talk to a US group, and then a lady there was like, she's just about to have her third Saturn return. I was like, wow, congratulations. But what you say just remind me another myths about Saturn return and 27 Club, Club 27.
Yeah.
This is very interesting, especially for astrologer. I think for the musician, for the people in the pop music industrial, they have this famous Club 27. For those musicians who never
graduated past their return.
From astrologer's view, it's like this, but sometimes I ask myself, is that nice to say that?
No, it's not really.
No, it's not. It's not. I don't really want to say that, but there is a myth there. There's a kind of like a mystic feeling there, like, why those people haven't passed the time of the Saturn return? I don't want really go that harsh, say, because they are not ready or this and that. That's different. That's different. But that is something quite interesting. That is something quite interesting for those people who think about Saturn return, and that there is the Club 27. That is kind of interesting, and people always talk about it. I just thinking, because what you say remind me that story. So I would just say, whenever you talk about it, it's just be,
Here's a little thought for you, Rod, because I've talked about Saturn is, in my view, utterly amoral. Saturn is not a moral planet. It's a planet that Saturn is said to be exalted in the sign of Libra, which is the sign of the scales, which is justice. But really, that's because sometimes the word karma is pinned onto Saturn, which I'm not entirely happy with, because it's kind of got other ramifications. But the idea here is like one of the reasons I think Saturn's exalted in Libra, the balancing the scales, is kind of Saturn is that principle. You do this, that will happen. If things go out of whack that way, that will happen. And it's kind of, so that's it's one of those boundaries, and there's no morality with there. Saturn is incredibly experienced often as very harsh, because on an individual level it can result in the most unfair circumstances, and same on a collective level, but it's always because it's the consequences of earlier events. So one of the harshest examples I've given, and I know some people probably going to accept some people, but whatever. I do that on a regular basis. One of the harshest examples I've given is, for example, in the post-colonial legacy, for example, when you had England in its Victorian hubris going and taking over the world and whatever, and the same with a lot of other European powers, carving up continents and creating new boundaries between countries, and then when that all blew over, or whatever, the empire fell apart, whatever happened historically, left with these countries with all these messed up boundaries. You have all of these wars and epidemics and contagions. That is fair. None of it is fair, but it's all the fallout from the reordering of the boundaries and the control structures. And on an individual level, it's kind of like, you see this all the time. Sometimes there's this thing like people get sick, and sometimes you can say, oh yeah, because you ate a lot of the wrong food or whatever. What do you say to some kid who's born with cystic fibrosis? It's an inherited condition. It's a genetic freaking condition. It's not fair, but it's a consequence of the genes. It's a consequence of the ancestry. It's a consequence of the heredity. Saturn, that is why Saturn is the great malefic as well. It rules time and mortality. It also rules consequences, and it's not moral. This is contrast that to Jupiter. Jupiter is emotional. It's fire and water signs. Jupiter rules Pisces and Sagittarius. It's emotional and it's moral. Jupiter's about fairness and making sure the right people get the right things. Saturn is not about that at all.
I like this. This is quite interesting, and I like what you say. It's like separate it from like that's a consequence, but it's not what you done. But maybe it's the ancestor. But that's how people say. I don't know. When you say the word karma is a little bit harsh, to be honest.
Yeah,
but that's why
I don't like the word karma.
I agree. Yeah, I agree, because usually people will say karma, and it sounds like pretty harsh. It's like have I done something?
It's like victim blaming, right?
I agree. I 100% agree. Now I get you. Now I understand why you say don't want to go to the word karma. I get it. But okay, there's another story, another myth about the Saturn return is what I realized that once students realize they can draw like a solar return chart, they will draw a Saturn return chart. Then they started to like, read my Saturn return chart. My Saturn return is soon or something. They have so many things. It was quite interesting. First, some people usually think about, tomorrow is my Saturn return. I should be careful. Tomorrow.
Well, the reason we're laughing, by the way, is because Saturn is what we said earlier. Saturn's so slow. You can see it coming. It's a freaking process. Saturn is like Mars. Now Mars, maybe Mars return because Mars is it can be really fast, bang, you know. But Mars often acts prematurely, so even if you timed it to the minute, it would probably come a week
earlier.
So anyway, but Saturn is usually exactly on time, and it's part of a process.
Yeah, and it takes a long time.
Yeah.
So I usually when I heard that, I was just like, darling, that would be another 2 or 3 years to think about this question. Okay. Yeah. And the second thing is about the people I was one of them when I was like 26 before 27. My Saturn return come very early, 27 something. Yeah. And then just when I was 27, and then that was a Saturn return. And then before that, I was like study the Saturn return chart and this and that. Then finally, with my experience, my own terrible bloody experience, I learned is that Saturn return, what you focus is really your natal Saturn. That is most important. Like you say, all of them, what sign, what house, what aspect, or you want to apply Hellenistic daytime or nighttime, this and that. Yes, all about it. It's all about the have you follow the rule? Have you really study hard about his lesson?
Yeah.
And then even you say you study quite hard, it's still like, no, do it again.
I mean, it's very variable, isn't it? I mean, because I mean, I don't know. I think I have I have an abstract thought, and then I'll talk a bit about my Saturn return because you know, not in detail, but the abstract thought was just this is from Kabbalah and, you know, the tree of life and whatever.
Okay.
And it always interests me that you know, you've in the tree of life model, which is a metaphysical model of reality from Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, right? So you've got the left hand pillar and the right hand pillar and the center pillar. The right hand pillar is called the pillar of mercy. And the left-hand pillar is called the pillar of severity. And the top of the left-hand pillar, the tree of life, is ruled by the sphere called Bina.
Bina,
is Saturn.
Saturn,
Symbolizes Saturn. That's really understanding, because one of the key words for Bina, the top of the pillar of severity, the top of the tree of life, which is close to God, close to the source in this model, is understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
The top of the right hand pillar of mercy is wisdom. So that's really it pays to think about that, because Saturn represents true understanding. Why is that the top of the pillar of severity? Because it's kind of like the thing truth hurts, but that's a bit too glib. It's sort of like you have to go through stuff. You have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes to understand it. Whatever it is. Wisdom is pillar of mercy stuff. You can be wise by learning things and conversing with people, and having empathy and all of that.
Yes.
To understand, to really understand, you've got to go through stuff.
Yes, very Saturnian way.
Yes,
exactly.
No free lunches, no easy rides.
No. Well, I mean, we try to unpack this Saturn return. First, we'll be very careful not going to freak you out. Saturn return is not all about the bad thing, but it's all about the hard work. It's all about hard work, and that is something you can, you know, expecting in the end of this period. I mean, you are more comfortable with yourself. You're working harder, and then I think the Saturn just teaches us like trying to be, you know, be yourself, be your true self. To be honest. Yeah,
I think that's exactly right, and I think also a key word of Saturn is testing. We
Mm-hmm.
often feel, but that's more like a reaction that we have as
Mm-hmm.
humans. We feel
Yes.
like we're being
Being
tested,
tested. Yeah.
and that's probably not entirely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a value in that, because
Mm-hmm.
you always learn through that process, as you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my own Saturn return was loads better than I thought it would be.
Mm.
And I think because I've got a fairly prominent natal
Mm-hmm.
Saturn, not
Mm-hmm.
in the best shape, it has to be said. It's in detriment and
Mm-hmm.
retrograde in a night chart. It is picking up some nice aspects from both Venus and Jupiter, which is what we
Mm-hmm.
call the conditions of bonification in Hellenic
Okay.
astrology. So it's always shown up, and it rules my part fortune as well. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to drag in too many, but the point is, I was kind of dreading it. And then what actually happened
Mm-hmm.
is, because my Saturn's in my 10th sign,
Mm-hmm.
ninth house, but 10th sign, I was given, I just finished my degree, I just graduated, and I
Mm-hmm.
was given a load of extra responsibility
Huh.
in a clinic to
Mm-hmm.
run it for the first time, to
Mm-hmm.
deal with sometimes very severely ill
Mm-hmm.
patients. Some of those patients were a real handful.
Mm-hmm.
Working in the clinic was a real handful. My boss was, at the time, very nice man, but also a total nightmare. So it was kind of, it was, I mean, because yeah, it was very chaotic, but
Mm.
it was really a very useful
Mm-hmm.
time. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't horrific. It was just, as you say, hard work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and to me, it was like, okay, so now you've learned all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you've done all this work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the word? Put your money where your mouth is. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, show us what you got.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
a little bit, and it was temporary. And then when the
Mm-hmm.
Saturn return moved off, I
Mm-hmm.
sort of left that job, and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of period ended. But
Mm-hmm.
so it depends where your Saturn
Mm-hmm.
sits, really, what you will get. But it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be some kind of summation slash testing vibe
Mm-hmm.
going on, and it
Mm-hmm.
can be enormously useful. It
Mm.
can be painful, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, my own experience with Saturn return, what I related is like my Saturn is in 12th in Gemini, but it's the ruler of the 7th and 8th. When I first realized Saturn return is coming, so I was like, oh, what should I do? And the first things I was thinking is about that, because I was working on the media at that moment, doing the radio show and TV hosting. So first things I was thinking, you know what? 12th house doesn't like a public eye. So
Yeah.
I was very quickly resigned from all those posts and then find something. I went to France to study French, Gemini thingy, study thingy.
Yeah.
But I forget that's a house ruler of 7 and 8.
Yes.
So there's a whole lot of relationship issue.
Oh God. Yeah.
That was the most tough lesson I learned during that time. I mean, it's quite interesting. No, now I can say interesting. That time I was just like,
that really yes, hard, difficult. Because I mean, you've got two challenging houses being brought in there, in the 12th, where Saturn is, and
yes,
8th, which is a house of suffering. I mean,
yes,
it's a very rare chart where you don't find some mitigating or improving circumstances, though. So for you, that would be Saturn. You're born during the day, so Saturn's in triplicity.
Yes.
So it's got some dignity, and it's in the day. And actually, the 12th house is the house of Saturn's joy. So I'd imagine that despite all the difficulty with other people and any grief that you encountered during that time through other people, there would be some element where you kind of enjoyed the seclusion at times. You were quite glad to be out of the public eye while you're going through that.
Yeah, I agree. Because I do, that is the things I want to do, because I don't know how to get out of there, and I just like, I want to go to study. But
yeah,
let's go.
Yeah.
I think that time, I think I made the right decision. If not, I won't be here.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I get that. I mean, look, as I say, that I know people who have really difficult Saturn placements, and actually, mine's not easy, but there are definitely worse ones. And even the ones where a planet will always produce whatever it's going to produce, and some of
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be hard if it's Saturn usually, but there's always some positive use. And usually the person will find it. I always say water finds its own level. People find their, that you say, oh, this Saturn could sort of be. I'll give you an example so you know what I'm blithering on about. But there's a friend of mine who has Capricorn rising and Saturn in Cancer in the 7th. The Saturn is tightly squared to Mars and the Sun and Venus in Libra. So that's, there's a mitigator there. But this is a very close friend of mine, and they work and have worked for many years with people who are mentally ill and have often a lot of the people they've worked with are people who've had problems with their families. Their families have thrown them out, so they sort of provide the sort of boundaries for those people. Like the previous job, they used to run a halfway house sort of thing, or be a manager in one of them for people with mental health problems. And current job, they sort of inspect old people's homes and make sure those homes are being run properly, like quality control inspect. So the point there is that Saturn in Cancer, which is objectively in a very difficult position and being beaten up by Mars and the Sun, is being manifested in these incredibly constructive ways.
Wow.
You see,
I like this example.
But this happens all the time in astrology. It's like we find that there is no, I mean, this, I'm not being Pollyanna. I realize that this person did go through some really, really difficult relationships when they were younger. And when I say really difficult, I mean really difficult.
Okay.
As in, bad. But it still has this incredibly positive place in the world. And I think part of the Saturn return might be finding your place. And if you're not in the right place, if you're not doing the thing, it might be harder.
Yes.
Perhaps, but
I think the Saturn return, I mean, well, the experience wouldn't be pleasant, wouldn't be like a nice holiday. But I think it's like the work you have to do, you have to done, and the journey you have to go. You have no choice. You will go through it. Even you say, I don't want to go. Wow.
Yes, that's
it will come to you
now.
too.
But
I think just don't be afraid. And the first, if you are going to think about what are you going to do for the Saturn return, first check your own birth chart and understand. Ask yourself, what's your Saturn theme? Which house? What sign? What house is ruled? Or you want to use like Marcus, apply some traditional and Hellenistic view about the daytime planet, or is daytime chart or nighttime chart, and then all these kind of things, and work out the things your experience. Because if you approach that time, you probably already notice what's coming up. Saturn is not Uranus. It will not give you this. Saturn is like keep saying, do this before I come in back.
And look at the times. Obviously, every 7 years or so, Saturn is going to be squaring or opposing or squaring, conjuncting his own position.
Exactly.
So if you're coming up to your Saturn return, look at when you're 21.
21, exam that time.
Square. Look at when you're 14, and look at what happened to you when you're 7, and you'll get some idea of the kind of certainly some idea of how it might feel. But bear in mind that with maturity, preparation, Saturn, you can always see Saturn stuff coming.
You
always see it coming, because you can see it coming over the hill, and it's a certain inevitability, like sort of tectonic plate movements or whatever. But you can see it approaching, and the thing to do with Saturn is you pay the damn tax, which means you just do what's necessary. And there are certain things you can do to help adapt to Saturnian transits, and they are basically embody the positive qualities of Saturn, which would be discipline, editing things out of your life which are not serving you, which is another part of discipline, really. But Saturn is about editing, remove those things which are not helpful. There, traditionally there'd be things you could do like fasting. I mean, this is not for
Ah,
anyone who's suffered from eating disorders or whatever, but
okay.
if
Mm-hmm.
you haven't, then something like fasting or instituting a window fast.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I mean, there are other things. I like the Wim Hof thing, like I go cold swimming once a week, which I call with my angular Saturn. It's paying my
Mm-hmm.
Saturn tax.
Ah, okay.
Giving myself a weekly ice bath or going into
Uh-huh.
cold water. It literally is paying my Saturn tax because it makes me feel. It actually makes you feel great afterwards. And I honestly think that doing that
Mm-hmm.
has added so much good stuff to my life in terms
Mm.
of psychological resilience and
Yeah.
physical resilience.
Yeah.
I think that is, again, one of the positive dividends of applying
Mm-hmm.
Saturnine. Last thought, Saturn and Mars, the two malefics,
Mm-hmm.
don't give you anything for nothing.
Mm.
They both give you rewards if you pay up front. So with
Mm-hmm.
Mars, it's all about exercise is a Mars thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody, I've got to go to the gym, and then you
Yeah.
go to the gym and you're like, I feel great. That's a
Yes.
Mars thing you
That's
put
Mars thing. Yes.
with Saturn. I don't want to limit what I want to eat. I don't want to do this really
Mm-hmm.
hard, difficult thing that entails
Yeah.
loads of discipline. I've got to invest loads of time. And then you do it and you're like, oh my God, I've just upped my skill level by a point, or
Mm.
I've got rid of my muffin top or whatever the hell it is. So it's like the malefics are
Mm-hmm.
difficult,
Yeah.
but they're very much that you pay up front and
Yeah.
then you get the reward.
Yeah.
So with Saturn, do the discipline thing and
Yes.
you.
I agree. Yeah. I think today we re-examine what is Saturn return and what you can expect. It's not all horrible, terrible things, but it's not fun, to be honest. There's a work to do, there's a job to do, there's a duty to do, there's a tax to pay. So, but don't see it as a kind of the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. Everyone will have Saturn return. But after that, you will get your I really don't want to say reward, but
No,
yes, it's not reward. You will get what you deserve. It's like I don't want to.
I don't even want to say we'll get what you deserve, because I do want to emphasize that I do think I don't like that idea of karma. Some people, and this is a very stoic idea, some people do have much harder lives than others. That's just a fact. And not everybody gets what they freaking deserve. I mean, come on. If some people got what they deserve, do you know what I mean? But it's like, it's both for positive and for negative. There are some people who are in positions of great power and fame and success who really probably, if we're being moral about it, don't deserve it. And there are other people who work very hard and are super nice and really kind to people. And it's like, come on, why isn't nobody? So it's not always about deserving, but I think
I agree.
It's more about being pragmatic. You play with Saturn, you play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah, like I think, yeah, this is like I think very, very gentle. I still say it's gentle, because sometimes when you hear people talk about Saturn return, they're going to freak you out.
Yeah,
that's like all the bad things. Well, it's not all about that, but just I think bite your tongue,
but more it's to say, with Saturn you can see it coming. So it's not going to be something usually, unless your Saturn is plugging into Uranus and Mars and loads of crazy stuff's happening at the time, like eclipses or whatever. It's Saturn return on its own is not usually going to be something that absolutely sideswipes you. It's going to be a sort of cumulative, the sort of culmination of a slow cumulative process. And just last thought, the 2027 club idea. I mean, I think there's some relevance in that. We know that there are a few famous singers and musicians, like Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, others like that, who have difficult Saturns, arguably to greater or lesser degree, and who, things definitely got more on top of them as they were coming up to their Saturn return. There is no, I'm not a fatalist. I don't believe there's an inevitability to that. And I think it's likewise that, like any life on the ground, looks very difficult, looks very different when you're looking at it from the outside. So even if don't overly anticipate difficult circumstances, because often you'll look at an astrological transit and say, oh my God, that's going to be terrible. But then when you're actually living through it, sometimes it is really difficult, but it's never what you think it's going to be exactly. And so those 21 Club people, there were other people probably who aren't famous in the same way, or don't have that notoriety. There are probably loads of people with very similar charts or far worse charts who didn't end up leaving the planet at the same time. It's all about, you can't separate the individual from their life. Just look at the astrology, know that look at, as Rod said, look at what your Saturn is symbolizing, and then observe what is happening at the time, and just pay what Saturn taxes you can. Play the hand that you are dealt, and you will come out of it stronger and better than you were when you went in.
Yeah, like Adele is an example. I think you, me, we all through this journey, and we find our path and continue working on. Adele, look, now she has her album, and what she talking about is that time, how she, how her experience, and then she turned it into her work, into her music. That's why people say, "Well, Adele, wow, it's so heavy." I say, "Hey, for someone just after Saturn return, easy on her. Come on, just give her a break, really."
Yeah, she does have quite a good Saturn.
She has an angular Saturn. She has
strong,
angular Saturn.
It's very strong.
Yeah, Saturn in Capricorn.
Yeah, it's in its own sign, and she's born during the day, which would be traditional factors which would make that Saturn operate in at the very least a less negative way. It's still really heavy because it's
still pretty. I mean, it's an example for someone who be ruled by Saturn. The Saturn is the most powerful planet in her chart, kind of. I shouldn't say because I haven't studied her chart. I shouldn't say most powerful. Saturn is powerful.
It's prominent.
It's prominent. Yeah, it's prominent. And it's angular. It's like you're going to see it. You're going to see the quality. When she starts singing, you can see the Saturn, the image on her even when she was 25.
Yeah.
But she still has her, journey to take, her work to do, then building up to now. So I mean, this is Saturn. This is how Saturn going to.
It's very interesting. I just thought the one thing that really made me think about with her was Saturn in the 7th house of fans and whatever. Was, she's famous over the last few years for having lost a lot of weight.
Yes.
And then she got massive criticism for that. Like people treated her really harshly. I think that's her Saturn return process in a way, like, because Saturn is a reducing, concentrating, dense planet. It's in the 7th house of other people, so her fans.
Yeah.
She's like she does all this discipline, weight and stuff. And then people are like slagging off. Wow, that's hard, and that's really hard to live through. So kudos to her. Anyway, but
all right, then I think we spent enough time talking about Saturn return, and I hope this helped you understand what is Saturn return and how to prepare or how to study your Saturn return, and what you can do with Saturn return. And then next week, I would suggest because it's very close to the solar eclipse.
Yeah,
I think was on the 4th of December. So I would suggest next week, let's go for solar eclipse. That would be more fun to talk about it.
Brilliant.